Welcome to Catherine's Plates, where I'm going to show you 4 delicious hearty stews, perfect for these winter days. We are going to start off with a creamy chicken stew in the crock pot. First thing we're going to do is take 1.5 pounds of boneless, skinless chicken breast. I'm going to chop these into bite-sized pieces. And then we're going to place these into the bottom of a 6-quart crock pot. I'm going to peel and chop up 3 medium to large size russet potatoes. We're going to place these into the crock pot on top of the chicken, along with 3 carrots that I have peeled. I'm cutting these into about 1/4 inch rounds, and we're going to add that to the crock pot also, along with 1 onion that I'm just going to peel and then chop into large pieces. Go ahead and place those into the crock pot. We're going to take 2 ribs of celery that I've washed off and 1 red bell pepper. We're going to chop those up into nice pieces and add those to the crock pot also. We're going to go ahead now and season with 1/2 teaspoon of rosemary, 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, 1/2 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to put 1/2 teaspoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. We're going to just pour this all over the vegetables, and then what we're going to want to do is add 4 cups of chicken broth. And then we're going to stir this very carefully until it is all well combined. We're going to place the lid on, and we're going to cook this on low for about 7 to 8 hours, or high for 4 to 5 hours. We want to make sure that the chicken is cooked through and tender, and the vegetables are also tender. 30 minutes before the stew is done, we're going to take the lid off. I'm going to add 1/2 cup of frozen peas. This is going to add a delicious color and more flavor. We're going to add a slurry, which is going to be 2 tablespoons of cornstarch that I combined with 1/4 cup of water. We're going to add this to the stew. Then we're going to add 1/4 cup of milk. We're going to stir this until everything is well combined. And then you're going to want to taste for seasonings to see if you need to make any adjustments. We're going to place the lid back on and cook an additional 30 minutes or so until everything is done and the stew is nice and thick and hearty. And look at this. Very delicious. And here we have the perfect bite. To make the Cowboy Stew, I always like to cook my ground beef first before I place it into the crock pot. I have a large skillet over medium-high heat, and I've placed in 1 tablespoon of cooking oil, and we're going to start heating that up. We're going to go ahead now and add 1.5 to 2 pounds of ground beef into our skillet. I'm going to add 1 chopped onion. I'm going to just take my meat chopper, or you can use any kind of kitchen utensil. I'm going to start breaking up the ground beef. We want to start browning it up, and then the onions will soften down also. I'm just taking some paper towels to help drain the excess grease out of our pan once the ground beef is nice and browned up. We're going to add in some cumin. We're going to give this stew some warmth. I'm going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1 teaspoon of chili powder, Now you can adjust these seasonings as you go along. If you want less of something or more of a flavor, you can certainly adjust it. I'm going to be adding some salt. This is a pink Himalayan salt. You can use any salt. I'm going to put in about 1.5 teaspoons. This is going to be a very big stew. We want to make sure that it's seasoned very well. We're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of cracked black pepper. And then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. Now as a thickener, we're going to go ahead now and add in our all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons. This will help thicken the stew as it's cooking. So we want to stir everything together to make sure that the ground beef is coated with that flour. I've turned off the burner. We're going to pour the meat mixture into the bottom of our crock pot. I'm just using a 6-quart. I've got a link of smoked sausage, or you can even use a kielbasa. I'm going to cut these into 1/4 inch rounds. Then I'm just going to place these into the crock pot on top of the ground beef. Now I also have some potatoes over here. There's 4 of them, and I'm going to be chopping those up and placing those in the crock pot also. Now I'm going to be adding 14 ounces of baked beans. I like the baked beans because it's a cowboy stew and it just adds a great flavor to it. It's already got some deliciousness in it. There's some bacon and also brown sugar in these baked beans. Now there's 14 ounces going in. I have a can of Rotel tomatoes. It's got some diced chilies in there. Will give it a nice flavor. Now if you don't like the Rotel, you can also use just diced tomatoes that come in a can. I'm just going to put the juice and all in there. I'm going to be placing some corn in. You can use frozen or you can use canned corn. Between 1/2 cup to a full cup of corn. And just place that into the crock pot. Got some parsley flakes. I think we're going to put in about 2 tablespoons. It'll give it some nice color in there and add some flavor. Now I've got some beef broth. I'm going to pour in 2 cups. You can use anything. If you want to make some better than bouillon, you can do that also. That will give it a nice rich flavor. I'm going to put the 2 cups in. I'm going to hold off on the other 2 cups, and we're going to check out the stew later on and see if we need to add any more liquid to it. We're going to mix this very well until everything is combined. It looks delicious. I can tell you the smells are amazing. Let's place the lid on the crock pot. I'm going to cook it on low for 6 to 8 hours until the potatoes are tender and cooked through and everything is heated through. Now, if you want a rush job on this, you can cook it on high for about 4 to 5 hours. Alright, look how thick and hearty this cowboy stew is. Let me know down in the comments what other things you would put in your cowboy stew. Nothing beats my hearty beef stew. I've had this recipe forever. We're going to start off in a large Dutch oven or a soup pot. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. You can use like olive oil or avocado oil is another good healthy oil. I've got about 1.5 pounds of beef stew meat. We're going to salt and pepper the top side of it. I'm going to flip it all over, and then we will season the other side with some salt and pepper. This will help to flavor and also help brown the meat. We're going to place our seasoned beef stew meat into the hot oil in the soup pot, and we're going to flatten it down so that it all browns evenly. We're going to let it sit for a few minutes to get nice and browned. And then what you want to do is we're going to flip it over, brown the other side of it, and cook that down for a few minutes. Now that the meat is all nice and browned, we're going to add 2 cups of water, or enough water to cover over the meat. We're going to bring this to a simmer on high heat. Once we get the simmer, we're going to turn down the burner to a medium heat. You want to place your lid on it. We're going to cook it for about 30 minutes to help tenderize the beef stew meat. In the meantime, I've got 5 large red potatoes, and I'm just going to cut these into bite-sized pieces. We're going to do the same thing to 2 yellow onions. Just take the skin off, chop those up. We've got 2 ribs of celery we're going to chop up into bite-sized pieces. And then you want about 1 cup of carrots. After the stew meat has cooked and is tender, we're going to remove the lid and we're going to add our chopped potatoes, onions, celery, and the carrots. We're going to add half a can of tomato soup, and this is about 5 ounces. Now if you want to add tomato sauce, you can do that also. I'm going to take 1 can of 14 ounces of drained peas, add that. 1 can of 14 ounces diced tomatoes, juice and all. 1 can of beef broth, 10 ounces. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. We're going to season with about 1/4 or 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper, and then about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. We're just going to take a wooden spoon, blend this all together until it's well incorporated. We're going to add water to cover all the way up to the vegetables. You don't want to go over the vegetable line because the vegetables will release water while cooking. So just stir this all together. Now you're going to want to taste for seasonings if you think you're going to want any extra salt or pepper. It looks really good in here. We're going to bring it to a boil over high heat, and then we're going to lower to a medium low. You can see the simmer going on right there. We're going to place the lid on. We're going to cook for 2 hours. During the first 45 minutes to an hour, we're going to check the vegetables for tenderness and also the beef. You also want to check your liquid level at this time and make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pot. And then you want to cook an additional 30 minutes to an hour to finish cooking the vegetables to get them nice and tender, and also the beef should be nice and tender. And the soup should be nice and thick like a stew. How's that for a winter day? A big bowl of that, some crusty bread. Yeah. Okay, one of my favorites, Ground Beef Stew Casserole in the crock pot. To get started, I just have 2 pounds of ground beef in a large skillet over medium-high heat. I'm also going to add 1 onion that I just chopped here in my chopper. going to break up the ground beef into pieces using my meat chopper because we're going to want to brown up the meat. Now I'm just chopping up 2 ribs of celery, or 3. We've got 4 carrots, so I'm just going to peel. I'm going to chop up that also. These are just all in bite-sized pieces. And I've got 1 potato. I'm just doing 1 potato because we're using pasta at the end. So I've just peeled the russet potato and chopped that up in bite-sized pieces also to get that ready. Okay, our meat is all cooked. If you want to drain it at this time, you can. We're going to go ahead now and add 2 tablespoons of butter. That'll help add some flavor and will also help adhere the flour that we're fixing to add. Now this is a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. We're just going to stir it up into the ground beef mixture here to make sure that the meat is all coated well. And you want to make sure that we cook this for 1 minute while stirring. That way it cooks the raw flavor out of the flour. Well, we're just going to move this over into our 6-quart crock pot. We're going to go ahead now and add our chopped vegetables on top of the meat mixture. I have 1 packet of beef stew mix. This is dry, and in it is black pepper, salt, onion powder, garlic powder, thyme, paprika, and tomato flavor. So it's got some good stuff in it. And it's about a 1.5 ounce size package. So we're just going to sprinkle this all over the vegetables and the meat mixture. You're going to want to stir well to combine. We're going to add 3 cups of beef broth to our crock pot. Now if you have boxed broth or canned broth, you can add that. I'm going to be doing better than bouillon. You just prepare that with 3 teaspoons of the better than bouillon. This is a roasted beef flavor, and we're going to add it to 3 cups of hot water. And then we're just going to whisk that together until it's well blended. Yeah, if you haven't tried that better than bouillon, you might want to give it a try. It's really delicious. I'm just pouring this into my crock pot with everything, and then we're just going to stir this well until combined. It already smells delicious in there. Oh my goodness. The only thing about a crock pot is you got a long time to wait for things, but it makes your house smell delicious all day long. Once you get this all stirred up, we're going to place the lid on the crock pot. We're going to cook it for 4 to 6 hours on low until the potatoes are cooked through. Now, we can also cook it on high for 3 to 4 hours if you're in a big hurry and you want it soon. Okay, I took the lid off. Look at that sauce in there. Oh my goodness, doesn't that look delicious? That gravy, oh my gosh, it's so scrumptious. Okay, I've just stirred this up a little bit. Now, I love peas in my stew, so I'm going to add 1 can, which is like 14 ounces of drained sweet peas. And then I've cooked a bag of 12 ounces of egg noodles. So we're just going to add that to the crock pot, if we can get them out of the strainer here. They've been sitting for just a little bit. And we just want to mix this together. Oh, I promise you guys, when you make this, oh, it's going to be good. It's even good the second day. You can make this whole batch, freeze half of it, and bring it out for another day and just heat it up. So delicious. We're going to let this sit once we mix this all together for just a few minutes to let the noodles absorb all of those flavors in that gravy. Yeah, it's really good. We got one more thing to put on here. I'm going to show you what the bowl looks like right here. Look at that. I promise you, my bowl's going to look a little bit bigger than that. Yeah. Oh, There's one more thing. If you want to garnish that, you can with some of these French's fried crispy onions. Adds a nice flavor, a nice crispiness to the dish. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the 4 stew recipes. Don't forget to let me know in the comments down below which one was your favorite out of the 4. Or if you have a different stew recipe, let me know, because I promise you I would love to make it. Alright, I will see y'all on the next episode.